Pregătiți-vă tinerilor, dar mai ales tinerelor, să vă îndrăgostiți de cărțile unuia dintre cei mai citiți autori americani de ficțiune ai momentului.
Da, Pierce Brown.
Dacă nu ați auzit de seria Furia Roșie, dați repede un Google sau, cel mai simplu, stați cu ochii pe materialul următor. Vom afla cum este drumul către un așa imens succes, pentru că, deși are doar 30 de ani, Pierce a depus o muncă asiduă pe parcursul ultimilor 10, dar efortul lui a meritat din plin.
Astăzi, succesul lui este atât de mare încât nu mai știe cum să-i facă față.
Eu cred că știe și ne povestește chiar el toate astea, imediat. Abia aștept să iasă filmele.
Da, se fac și filme după romanele astea?
Da, și s-ar putea să se facă chiar și un serial. Și el lucrează și la scenariu. Hai, uită-te acolo și o să afli tot. Chiar tot.
Iartă-mă, dragă, iartă-mă. Hai să vedem.
First of all, it's a pleasure having you. You have so many fans here in Romania. I'm sure you're overwhelmed by what happened these days. By the way, is this your first time here?
My first time in Romania, yeah, but I've read a lot about it throughout, I guess, my childhood. I mean, first in legends and folklore, but then also in politics lately. But it's amazing to be here. The people are so friendly.
I know you didn't get to see much of Romania, but what do you think about the people? What do you think about your fans? They're so amazing.
Well, they're amazing. I've given more hugs out here than any other country, so I think it speaks to the Romanian people a little bit. Yeah.
Do you plan to come back?
Of course. I think I have to say that, right? No, but I will. Yeah. I mean, I love the food and I love the people, so that's why I come back to countries.
Well, I must tell you, our TV show is called Cool Stories. So we love stories. That's why I'm going to begin by asking you, how did your story as an author begin, as a writer? And maybe if you want to tell me how did your story as a reader begin, that would be great.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, I lived in 8 states growing up, so I went to 12 different schools, and I was following my mom around the country, actually, with my dad as well, but my mom's job took us around the country, and she was actually in she was in TV broadcasting, and so she was the general manager of TV stations. And so we followed her around, but that means it was very difficult for me to have friends along the way. And so I brought books with me instead of friends. Yeah, and so I would grow up near the woods, I would grow up near mountains, and I would take basically my books and a walkie-talkie into the forest and play all day and make forts and read books. And my dad would call me in for dinner with the walkie-talkie. And so that was my childhood, and it made sense that I become a writer. And I started writing a book at 18, and it was terrible book. But I wrote 6 books before I wrote Red Rising, and it took a lot of effort and trial and failure, but I started learning the process, and I finally found the story that I was meant to tell, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how would you describe your journey as an author, the publishing journey? You already answered me, but I'm also interested, what inspired you to create the Red Rising trilogy? I mean, not only, what were the authors that inspired you the most in your creation?
Yeah, quite a few things inspired me, but I grew up reading about Greek mythology because I thought it was so interesting, a culture, yeah, but a culture that created their gods to be so human, gods that were exaggerated forms of human beings that were selfish and petty. And I think that I was really interested in that as a kid, and so I was reading Antigone and being struck by how large a sacrifice Antigone made for the honor of her brother and for the honor of her family, to bury her brother when it was expressly forbidden by the tyrant of her city. She buried him anyway, and she was executed for it. And I thought that was inspirational because it was a story about a girl 2,500 years ago who at any other time in society, through all those hundreds of years, would have been disenfranchised. She would have been marginalized. But instead she was able to find her power by rejecting authority. And I thought that was powerful, and I wanted to bring that into a sci-fi world. And so I was hiking with friends, climbing a mountain. We were ice axes, so we were on the side of a mountain, and I was just thinking how tired my legs were, and I wish the gravity was less. And so I was like, there's less gravity? On Mars. And so I started thinking about Antigone in the context of sci-fi, and the story was born that way, and I wrote it in a month and a half after that.
I think that's amazing that you combined sci-fi and fiction and also history, actually, sort of.
History has the best stories, doesn't it? Yeah.
Just like, I don't know, George R. R. Martin did. He inspired a lot. Why sci-fi? Because you could have, I don't know, maybe stick with fiction, but you chose sci-fi. Is it because there are no limits?
Sort of, but I think science fiction has always been a method to critique the political world around us, but also a way to look into the human soul. And so what I wanted to do is talk about my own time, but also investigate humans a little bit. And so the mythology with the Greek myths that are playing into Red Rising and the Roman myths, I wanted to use that, but I also wanted to look at how the Romans used gods, the Greek gods, in order to create propaganda for the state. And they did what a lot of tyrants do. I mean, Hitler did it. Napoleon did it. They all basically pretended they were the heirs of this great mythology, this dynasty, and it made them seem as though they were respectable, but they weren't. And so I wanted to have that with the villains of my story, taking on the myths of the Romans and pretending that they were the heirs of some great dynasty, but they weren't. They were just tyrants like any other. And so exploring that felt like a natural progression.
What's your favorite Greek story?
Probably nowadays it's Narcissus because of cell phones. I mean, we're falling into our own selfies, and I think that'd be a hilarious Black Mirror episode. Right? Yeah.
I must ask you also, I'm trying to be fast because I know you don't have a lot of time. It's hard, but what was your first reaction when the Universal acquired the rights to make a movie out of your first book? Great first book. And also tell me a bit about this experience because maybe I didn't understand very good. You're working at the screenplay, you're writing it, and also you have 2 TV shows, right, in work?
So I sold it to Universal and felt like shock and awe. I didn't think, it was a bidding war between Sony and Universal, and it was incredible, and I got to write the first 2 drafts of the script. But over that process, I found out that it wasn't going to make the movie that I wanted to make. And so I actually have the rights back now, and we're making a TV show out of it. So I'm writing the scripts for the TV show because I think a TV show is a more natural way to explore this big world. And you haven't read it yet, but when you do, you'll find out how many. No. When there's so many characters, and I had to cut so many of them out, I had to limit my exploration of the world. And also, I could only explore a couple themes, but I wanted to explore all the themes. Yeah, everything, and also explore a little more than in the book series because you have a little bit more. You have 10 hours a season to tell a story, and I wanted to investigate it from other people's perspectives. And so I've been writing that now, and I have a director on board who's fantastic and you'll love, but I can't tell you his name yet. But I am so excited about that right now, and I think that it's the natural path is television, especially what you can do on TV now with Game of Thrones and shows like The Queen.
I have to ask you because you had such a tough journey as an author, and now you're also fighting for the movie, for the series to be what you want it to be. How did you find this strength to persevere? I mean, really?
Mostly just faith in my own intelligence. Now, I think there's several ways you can handle rejection, and I was lucky to have done it, being rejected when I was young, and so I was used to it, and it made me it made me angry in a good way. It made me more motivated, and I think you can either let it defeat you or make you more stubborn. And I just kind of dug my heels into the ground and kept working. But Red Rising, after I wrote it and it wasn't getting an agent, I thought that was the end of the road. I thought that I didn't have anything to say, and then finally an agent came out of nowhere and said she wanted to represent me, and then we sold the book 2 months later, and it was a huge success. And so it was really sticking to it, but then getting lucky, because that's when luck happens, is when you keep trying. I was living on an air mattress in my political science professor's garage when I found out that were going to be buying the books. So it was amazing because I actually got to take people on real dates, and so not just at Chipotle or make food at home. And I was able to move into my own apartment, do all these things, and then become a professional writer. And so it kind of all happened like that. But 7 years and then that, yeah. Yeah, but hey, it could have been worse. It could have been much older, and that struggle could have happened,
How do you handle such a huge success? How do you interact with your fans? Did you see it coming?
I think you have to have faith in your story, but you don't think that everyone's going to agree with you. And so I was surprised to find people agreed with me and they liked it. And I think you deal with it by just focusing on the work. And all I love doing is making stories, so what else was I supposed to do? Stop making stories? No, I mean, the most enjoyment I get is out of stories and then interacting with readers like I did in Romania today, yeah.
Tell me a bit about your next trilogy. It's currently in works. What is it about? Is it a follow-up? or yeah?
So it is a follow-up to Red Rising. So in Red Rising, I got 3 books, but I got to explore a lot of different themes. And then I'm doing 3 more books in the Iron Gold trilogy as an extension of it that takes place 10 years later with the same characters, because I wanted to see the characters from different perspectives. I wanted to see what happens after you win. What happens once a violent uprising overthrows the government. And I think we saw in Arab Spring how difficult that is. I think we've seen in a lot of Eastern European countries how difficult it is to maintain democracy and to maintain hope with corruption and things like that. And so for me, it's about exploring the idea of how do you keep hope alive when it's founders, when it slows down because your own allies don't agree with you. And it's also about looking at a Messiah character, Darrow, and how he handles winning. And what happens when his own side thinks that he's an irrelevant weapon, a tool that no longer exists in the modern age.
Wow, it sounds so complex. I have to ask you, have you also read like psychology books and, I don't know, Freud, Jung, something?
I read a lot of Freud. I'm actually rereading Jung right now on Man and His Symbols. It's actually in my backpack in my hotel room. Yep. So you nailed it, yeah. So, and yeah, well, it's no one's asked me that before, but I just love to read. If it's in front of me, I'll read it. I'll read the manual to a lawnmower if it's in front of me, yeah.
Okay, now I have to ask you something. Please give the children and the young people that are watching us right now a message and tell them the importance of reading, please.
If you don't read, you'll live just one life. If you read, you get to live 1,000 lives. Not only that, you get to experience who you are through other people. You get to find out what you love, what motivates you, what inspires you, but also what you dislike, the ideas that you think you need to take a stand against. And for me, reading was able to give me friends, but also help me figure out who I was. I was able to figure out things I believe so that in real life I could be a better person and realize what I wanted to achieve. So I encourage you to read so you can live 1,000 lives or maybe 1,000,000, depending how fast you read.
So great, thank you. Okay, one last question. Actually, 2. What's your biggest dream right now?
Biggest dream?
Yeah.
To go to Mars. Seriously. Oh my God, I would love to. I would love to. One of the reasons, yeah. I mean, I think that humankind has to expand. But I think we're so focused on our own issues now, politically, socially, militarily, that we are. I did, yeah, and I would love to go to Mars, even if it's just for a little vacation.
I hope you'll get there. I really hope that. And
Yeah.
Okay, and one last question, because we're a happy channel. What does happiness mean to you? What makes you happy? I know it sounds like a cliche, but every time I get an answer from people, I'm like, wow.
Happiness to me means more than momentary satisfaction. It means the joy of the moment matches up with the joy of who you are as a person, and it almost increases exponentially. And so when you find something that you love, find something that you enjoy, and you can combine that with being proud of that moment. So not like, getting drunk or something like that, but you can combine it with something that is who you are, then that's what happiness means. And happiness isn't one moment, it's not anything like that, it's a path and it's a journey.
Practic, noi am crescut cu acest spectacol, ne-am maturizat cu acest spectacol. Au fost perioade în care n-am jucat acest spectacol, l-am reluat cu altă experiență, a venit Marian. Spectacolul nu se termină niciodată de lucrat, practic. El e cu totul altfel de fiecare de când îl jucăm. Ceea ce facem noi 3, am descoperit că e cumplit de greu.